You are listening to 3 Point Lead presented by Loeb's Leads. I am Max Loeb. Today is Wednesday, June 26th, and we have a wild episode. Mikal Bridges has been traded to the New York Knicks. The power of friendship. The Villanova Wildcats are back in Gotham to a new degree for 5 first-round picks. 5. 4 unprotected, but 5 overall. We'll talk a little bit more as the episode goes on. But continuing from last episode, we also have all 4 NFC divisions ranked, predicted, as well as the additional wild card teams in the NFC, because kind of a spoiler here, the projections right now for the divisions in the NFC really aren't that crazy. I think most of us are going to agree. So we talk about the wild cards as well. But before we get into any of that, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Better Picks. It's my favorite way to enjoy fantasy sports, where you can pick more or less on your favorite player's stats to win up to 1,000 times your entry. Right now, Better's offering a first deposit match of up to $250 if you go to my socials and join with code LEADS. That's LEADS, LEADS, all caps, on Better Picks. Without further ado, let's get into this episode. You guys know the Spider-Man meme where the two Spider-Men, if you will, are pointing at each other. Well, that's the meme right now in the city of New York, because the New York Knicks and the Villanova Wildcats of old, the Chris Jenkins, Ryan Arcidiacono Villanova Wildcats are back. They're back in New York playing professional basketball under Tom Thibodeau. Like I just said, 5 first-round picks, 4 of which are unprotected, as well as Bojan Bogdanovic for Mikal Bridges. Now, if you're the New York Knicks and you're in the Eastern Conference, you want to go make a move to compete with the Boston Celtics, compete with the Philadelphia 76ers, compete with those other teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, anybody else who are going to win games, and they're going to challenge you as the playoffs go on. So you need to build some depth in it. What it seems like is OG Anunoby coming back to New York is not a foregone thought. What really does seem like a foregone thought, though, is one of the big men, whether it's Isaiah Hartenstein or Mitchell Robinson. I think one of those guys will probably go. That'll probably be the biggest casualty there. But adding Mikal Bridges, if you're the New York Knicks, I mean, you look at the stars on the market outside of maybe Kevin Durant right now, Paul George, probably one of the best you could get. I mean, he's young. Obviously, he played with these guys in college, and that does matter. You see how good the Knicks are despite not seemingly having as much talent as some of these other powerhouses in the Eastern Conference, because these guys have chemistry. They know how to play together, and they play really, really well. And if you're Tom Thibodeau, you go to this 6-7 stubborn rotation. You want the best 6-7 guys you can get. And if that means sacrificing depth, it means sacrificing depth. So I think that's what the Knicks are trying to do a little bit here, sacrificing depth, but their future as well, to add a guy who's going to give you 40 minutes a game, maybe 20 points a game. He's going to contribute, probably be the true number 2 on this roster outside of Julius Randle. We don't know what the health looks like for the start of next season. But overall, a very good trade, in my opinion, for the New York Knicks, right? You had to make a move. As for the Brooklyn Nets, I mean, they're getting a lot of assets. So if everything goes haywire at Madison Square Garden with them, you have the assets to a team who, you know, maybe they aren't as good as we think. Maybe in the Eastern Conference, a team like the Boston Celtics, a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, a team like maybe the Indiana Pacers, Philadelphia 76ers, like maybe the Knicks slide down into that 5 to 8 range, and they can't get out of the first round. All of a sudden, you have good picks. All of a sudden, that team starts to have some doubts, and all of a sudden, you know, they start blowing things up. And if you have picks down the line, if you're the Brooklyn Nets, you got to like what you're doing. Now, Mikal Bridges very clearly wanted out, and the Nets are kind of more in a rebuilding stage, so that made sense logistically. But another very, very fascinating trade rumor or talk. Let's see what's going on here. I'm literally checking notifications as we are talking, because Woj has been absolutely cooking tonight. But the rumor is that the Houston Rockets have inquired, at least, about Kevin Durant, right? The Sun, they're trying to use the Suns picks to be aggressive and get Kevin Durant into Houston. What does that do for Houston, though, is my question, right? Like, if you're the Houston Rockets, a team that, again, has a lot of really good assets, a lot of really, really good future picks, young, really good coach who's getting the best out of this team. I think people forget how hot they were at the end of the season last year. They almost made the play-in. Like, there's a young team who has a very promising future. What is mortgaging your future worth to get a guy like Kevin Durant for, let's say, 4 years, 4 good years? What is that worth to you? Is it worth a lot? I don't know if it is. So that's another rumor that's going on. As of now, there has been nothing yet Rockets possess a pick swap with the Suns in 2025, Suns pick in 2027, and could end up with the Suns pick in 2029 based on contingencies. If the Suns ever faced with breaking up team, Houston's also in prime position to pursue a younger Devin Booker. For now, let's see what else Woj had to say. Phoenix is trying to win. And again, last Woj tweet, the Knicks are determined to keep OG Anunoby. But regardless, a crazy, crazy night in the NBA. As you listen to this on your Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon, understand that Tuesday night into midnight as that clock strikes was crazy, is crazy. And I think it's only going to get crazier as time goes on, especially as the draft approaches. Maybe we could see some trades in the top 10 with these picks only a couple of days away. But we'll move into the next segment. We'll talk about some NFC playoff predictions, NFC division predictions. Appreciate you guys listening to the NBA Yap Sesh. Let's move on. Yesterday, we looked at the AFC teams. Let's take a look at the NFC teams now. And a little bit of a spoiler for you guys. A lot of these teams are probably where you think they're going to be. So we're going to talk about the division predictions. We're going to talk about 1 through 4 in the East, West, South, and North. But I'm also going to give you my 2 cents on the wild card teams because I do think there's some decent debate when it comes to 3 teams that are going to get the wild card because I think we'll probably all agree on the 4 division winners. But regardless, we'll start with the NFC East. Right now, we projected the Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Commanders actually together, tied for 3. I don't see any issues with any of that. I think the Eagles are far and away the best team in that division. I think there is a level or a tier that is between them and the Cowboys. However, I do think Dallas is still a wild card team, right? I think offensively, they're going to do a lot of really good things. Lots of playmakers. Dak is very good. He's in a contract year as well. Defensively, and I've been saying this for months, I am terrified about them stopping the run if I'm a Cowboys fan. I don't know if they can do it. I didn't think they did it well last year. Getting Trayvon Diggs back on the other side of DaRon Bland is going to be great, but you forget they lost Stephon Gilmore, at least as of now they lost Stephon Gilmore, who was pretty good last year. I know he's getting old and getting up there in age, but he was solid last year, not the same corner he once was in New England, but a guy who is pretty solid, to be honest with you. So not kind of a net zero in terms of the secondary, at least in my eyes. Can they stop the run? That's the biggest thing for me. I'm not convinced they can. I will wait to be proven wrong, but I don't think they can stop the run. And that, to me, is what's going to separate them from a team like Philly, who can go 8 deep on the defensive line, play some good defense in the secondary, and obviously their offense is very good. Giants, Commanders, you guys know there's only so much you can say about the Giants. The offseason was wild. I think they did the right thing in trying to build the trenches on both sides of the ball. I think people look at them losing Saquon and Xavier McKinney and say, okay, this is a team that got significantly worse. I'm not convinced they got worse, especially in the trenches, right? Brian Burns comes in. They spend a lot of money on their offensive line this offseason, multiple new acquisitions, multiple players who will start on the offensive line as well. So they're upgrading, at least on paper. It seems like they're doing the right things offensively in the trenches. They lose Darren Waller. You don't really know what's going to happen with the receiver room. Obviously, they draft Malik Neighbors, but who's really going to be the 2 that steps up? Is it Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot, who I think is very good? Is it Jalen Hyatt on the outside? Do we get anything out of Allen Robinson? Offensively, too many question marks for me to be confident they even make a run at second place in the division. So I think them for third is fine. And even if you want to throw the Commanders above the Giants, I think you could. But again, another team that's like, yeah, they're making some good moves. They just have so far to go, at least in my mind, unless Jaden Daniels comes in and is this unbelievable polarizing player. They just have so far to go. And to be fully honest with you, I don't think it's going to take more than 3-4 years for that team to get to where they want to go, but it's not going to be this year. So I think Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Commanders in that order is good. Let's move to the West. I mean, anybody surprised that it's Niners, Rams, and then Niners, Rams? I should ask that first. Is anybody surprised that it's Niners 1, Rams 2? Probably not, right? Seahawks, Cardinals. It's in that order. I would not be surprised if Arizona finished ahead of Seattle. I think we could talk about the 49ers and the Rams. I think the Rams are a very, very good team. I do think they're much like the Cowboys and the Eagles. I think there's a tier between those two, but I think the Rams are a really good team. I think Matthew Stafford is good enough to lead that team anywhere, really. Defensively, if they can continue to improve in the secondary, which they did as the season went on last year, obviously they bring in Trey White now. That's kind of the missing piece to me, as well as what they do to mask the loss of Aaron Donald, because that's the biggest loss you can get outside of talent, just game plan wise, right? You got coordinators staying up to figure out a way to stop this guy. Obviously, they draft both FSU linemen, and like I talked about with Trey White, they had a very good draft class last year as well up front. Like they got some good pieces. Their trenches are better than people give them credit for. I think that's another wild card team. We'll talk about the last wild card team as we get to that division. But I think it's a very good team. I just think there's a tier between them and the Niners. I think the Niners, assuming they bring Brandon Ayuk back, are see, it's tough. I don't think they're the team to beat in the NFC, to be honest with you, but I think they're up there. I think they are one of the three best, if not one of the two best, maybe the best team in the NFC. I think between Philly, them, and Detroit, who we'll talk about, it's a really, really tough pick. But I mean, San Francisco has a very good defense, a defense that lost their leader in the secondary last season, halfway through. I think people forget too. That's a really tough team to beat. Just looking at their defense, right? They're going to play hard. They're going to play physical. And then when you go to the other side of the ball, really good offensive line, especially at the tackle position. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brock Purdy, George Kittle, even Brandon Ayuk when he's back, Kyle Juszczyk. Like they can do so many different things offensively. And that's what I think is ultimately going to separate the 49ers from really anybody they play, because they can get into a shootout with you, but they can also play a defensive battle on the other side of the ball. Now, Arizona is fascinating to me because I do think defensively, they made good strides last year. I think Jonathan Gannon is a very good defensive-minded coach. Can he fully coach a team? Who knows? Like that, we got to wait to see. But it was really clear to see that last year after Kyler Murray came back, that offense was significantly better. And that was without a true number one wide receiver. I like Hollywood Brown. I think he's going to add a really, really interesting aspect to the Kansas City offense, but he's not this true dominant alpha outside receiver like Marvin Harrison Jr. will be. So I think you got him. You got James Conner, one of the most underrated backs in the NFL, Trey McBride. They got some solid players with Greg Dortch as well. I'm a big Greg Dortch fan. Like they got some really solid players over there. Do they make the playoffs? Probably not. Do they finish ahead of Seattle? Absolutely. I think Seattle is the fourth team in that division. There isn't too much to say. I think Geno Smith is slowly getting very underrated as well. I think he's a very good player that people will push to the side because of an injury-riddled season last year when in reality he really wasn't that bad. The Seahawks were just not great. The other side of the ball, though, and their offensive line worries me. I don't know how they're going to be defensively. The offensive line scares me for Seattle. Kenneth Walker is obviously very good, but can they consistently run the ball? Can they consistently create lanes for him? And Charbonnet is what I'm most worried about. So I will go San Francisco, LA, Arizona, Seattle for right now. And we can move to the North, which I think is the best division probably in the NFC because it's so competitive. Obviously, the Lions are projected to be in first, but we have Green Bay, Chicago, and Minnesota as the other three teams. Full transparency, I could see any of those teams sneaking into a wild card spot, including Minnesota. For all intents and purposes, I am actually going to keep them in that order in my prediction. I will say Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago, Minnesota, but I'm going to give you some reasons as to why every single one of those teams outside of the Lions, we don't need to talk too much about the Lions, outside of the Lions, can make the playoffs. Like Detroit, obviously offensively, the best in the NFC probably. Defensively, they got better. I think along the defensive line, they're going to be even better against the run after they were already really, really good last year. Defensive back, they get some help as well. I think it's just an improved defensive unit with an offense that's just a juggernaut, can block really well, can run the ball really well, can throw the ball. Like they can do everything. But Green Bay, obviously, you have the X factor in Jordan Love. He is the best quarterback in that division. He is truly the biggest game breaker on probably any team in that division outside of Justin Jefferson maybe, but truly the biggest game breaker in that division. So anytime you have a player like that of that caliber, you feel like you always have a chance. It's a guy like Josh Allen. It's a guy like Lamar Jackson. It's a guy like Patrick Mahomes. I am not going to sit here and compare Jordan Love talent-wise right now to those guys, but he has that type of impact on the game. So anytime you have a player like that with an improved secondary, obviously they signed Xavier McKinney, they bring in Josh Jacobs. The wide receivers played really, really well last year. They got a good team. They can win a lot of games. I think as the year progressed last year, it was really clear to see that good things were happening in Green Bay. They have a great coaching staff, a great support system around him as well. I think people overlooked that. Truly could have beaten the San Francisco 49ers in that second round playoff game. So we can't discount the success they had last year. I think they're a very good team. I go back and forth on if I think they're going to make the wild card. I am going to give them my last wild card spot for right now. But I do want to talk about Chicago because I've gone on record a couple times saying that this is the best defense in the NFL. And I truly do think it is the best defense in the NFL. I think on all three levels, there are no weaknesses. Defensive line, they have Big Billings in the middle. They have Montez Sweat on the outside. They can do a lot of good things. They can clog. They can pass rush. They can do good things. Linebackers, very, very good. Secondary, unbelievable. Like all three levels, it's the maybe not the best defense in the NFL. Maybe I can backtrack a little bit. The most complete defense in the NFL, absolutely. I think it's between them and the Jets, but I would give the edge to the Chicago Bears. It's just going to come down to Caleb Williams offensively. Like you watched last year, I actually saw a tweet a couple of days ago saying the Bears would have been 10-6-1, I believe, in games that would have ended if the games were to end after the third quarter. Like you don't play that fourth quarter. So it's the crunch time stuff that matters on the defensive side of the ball, but quarterback play as well. Obviously, Justin Fields was not great last year, so you bring in Caleb Williams, you bring in Keenan Allen, you bring in Rome Odunze, and you look at this offense as an explosive unit after years of it not being that. I think ultimately they'll go as far as Caleb Williams takes them. Again, it would not really surprise me if they leapfrogged the Packers and got that 7 seed. I think Chicago is my last team out right now, my 8 seed, but I really, really hesitate to speak so highly of those teams and be so confident in those teams without talking about Minnesota, because that Vikings team strikes me a certain way. I don't know why. I think they're significantly better than people are giving them credit for. I think you obviously lose Kirk Cousins, right? You obviously lose a player who is unbelievably efficient, threw a ton of touchdowns, was a very good player for you, led you to 13-4 the year before when they lost the Giants. And you think it's culture shock, and people in the media, including myself, kind of feed into it, because the reality was if the Vikings didn't fix the quarterback situation, or at least attempt to, Justin Jefferson may have left. Their effort to do that was J.J. McCarthy. I really don't think it was a bad effort. I think J.J. McCarthy is probably the best fit you can get for that offense. I also think people overlook the talent outside of Justin Jefferson on that offense. Like Christian Darrisaw, one of the best tackles in the NFL. They have a solid offensive line around him. Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones now, another guy who I absolutely cannot get enough of, Ty Chandler. I think him and Aaron Jones, outside of probably Gibbs and Montgomery, I'm trying to think of some other running back duos in the NFL, Mostert and Achane, but like they are a top 5 running back duo in the NFL, Chandler and Jones. I think that is an elite backfield that the Vikings have, and they're going to do a lot of really good things offensively. And defensively, guys, they were, I believe, top 12 second half of the season last year. And a huge predictor for your upcoming season success is a combination of lack of turnover, lack of staff turnover, roster turnover, plus whatever you did the second half of last season. As they got more comfortable in that Brian Flores defense, they got a lot better. And obviously they're going to bring in a guy like Jonathan Grenard. They're going to bring in Cashman for the Texans as well. So like I don't know, like that's a defense that could keep them in some games. You got outside playmakers. You got a quarterback who's won big games before at the college level. I don't know. I think it's a team that not a lot of people will give credit to. NFC South, I mean, I don't think anybody is going to go against me when I say the Falcons are the best team in that division offensively. I think they're going to explode. I think it's almost inevitable that Kirk Cousins has a good year. Kyle Pitts has a good year. One of the best offensive lines in the league, especially when it comes to run blocking. Bijan, Tyler Algier, obviously you have Drake London, Darnell Mooney, now Rondale Moore, a guy to take the top off. Like there's a lot of talent in that Falcons offense. They're going to score a lot. The question will always be defensively, what can they do? Because the pass rush is questionable and you don't know what you're going to get from the secondary outside of Bates and AJ Terrell. But this is a team that's going to score a ton of points. And in that division, like Carolina can't keep up with that. They play them twice a year. New Orleans can't keep up with that. They'll play them twice a year. Tampa, I don't think Tampa can keep up with that, to be honest with you. I do think Tampa's good, and I think it's worth talking about them because they won the division last year. Granted, they were a game away from losing it to New Orleans, but they won a game. They won the division last year. They won a playoff game, obviously. Baker was very good, but they bring him back. They bring Mike Evans back. There's only so much that team can do. I think their ceiling is moderately limited, at least. And I think when you look at a team like Atlanta, they're really just better pretty much in every facet. Like maybe there's a lane or two defensively that Tampa has an edge over them on, but I think they're really just better in every facet. Quarterback, offensive line. I would even say overall receivers, like your 3 deep receiver and tight end, I probably would take Atlanta's. Running backs, I would probably take Atlanta. Like, they're just a better team than Tampa. New Orleans fascinates me because I still really do think they have a good defense. Like, they have a defense that can keep them in games. Tyrann Mathieu was way better than people give him credit for. Marshawn Lattimore was back at, mandatory mini camp a couple weeks ago. Like, there's no issues there. I don't know. It's a defense that I'm not confident they're going to win a lot of games, but it's a defense that can keep you in games. And they have some talent on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, they have a younger receiver room, Chris Olave, A.T. Perry, Rashid Shaheed. Like, they have a younger receiver room that has some talent in it. What do you get from Alvin Kamara? Because ultimately, that's the heartbeat of that offense. That's going to cause a lot of issues game planning as well. It's not going to come down to Kamara in the end of succeeding and winning games. I think it's going to fall on Carr's shoulders more than anything else. But it's a big, big question mark in the offense because he's been their best player for 5-6 years, and now he's getting up there in age. He didn't really lose much last year, at least from what I saw, but he's getting up there in age. What does another offseason do to him? What does another year wear and tear do to him? We'll wait to see. But I like the direction that Carolina is going at the bottom of the division. I would be shocked if they finished ahead of New Orleans, to be honest with you. I do think New Orleans is still a better team, but they build the offensive line for Bryce Young. It was priority number one this offseason. It's a good call. They bring in some playmakers like Deontay Johnson. Obviously, they already have Adam Thielen on the outside, Xavier Legette. Like, they have some pretty good offensive playmakers. It's just a matter of Bryce Young putting it all together. And who knows, maybe he can. I think defensively, people forget that pass defense was really, really good last year. J.C. Horn is unbelievable. They got some safeties that can play. Like, that pass defense was one of the best in the NFL, but their run defense was so bad that you almost forgot about it. So I wonder what it's going to be like Carolina in terms of, can they put up enough points to compete with teams in their division? Sure. Like, I think they can compete with Tampa and New Orleans. Atlanta, probably not. And you look at some of the other wild card teams, like, can they put up enough points to compete with Green Bay? Probably not. Chicago, if they're operating on all cylinders, probably not. Not the Rams. Cardinals, I really don't know. Like, I don't think offensively they have enough right now to truly, truly, truly feel like they're in a spot to compete with teams, I'd say, across the conference, because I think they could within the division with New Orleans and Tampa, not Atlanta. But throughout the conference, I don't know. So the South, Atlanta, Tampa, New Orleans, Carolina, in that order for me. So recapping now, we'll go division winners: Eagles, Falcons, Lions, Niners, and then the wild card teams I have right now, at least maybe not in this order: Dallas, Green Bay, and the Rams, with the Chicago Bears being the 8th seed and the first team out. If you guys are watching on YouTube, make sure you comment your 2 cents on this. And if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you follow the podcast so you don't miss any of the frequent episodes that will be coming out this week, as well as weeks coming on. I appreciate you guys watching and listening. We will move on to the final segment of the episode. See you guys there.